pleased to present for your consideration.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Jabberbox Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Bond, and today we have a special guest with us, stepping in for Dan while he's on vacation, a Mr. Sketchcraft Rob. What's up, Rob?
Hey, it's a very special episode. It's a very special episode of Sketchcraft Rob with Andy Bond. See, I changed it, turned it around. It's Jabber Sketchcraft. It was Jabber Mega Potatoes, but that dude, he didn't show up.
Sketchbox.
Okay, man, look, everyone's going to run to GoDaddy and try to grab URLs. So you stop being
if
creative.
you're joining in for the very first time, then you should know that this show is about the two of us, normally Dan and myself, as we ramble on through pop culture topics, such as, but not limited to, games, movies, shows, and whatever else we want to talk about. Some housekeeping before we jump into the show. You can get the show over on youtube.com/dandydigital or over on Spotify and iTunes by searching Jabberbox and hitting that subscribe button. You can always find us over on patreon.com/dandydigital. Now, getting into the show, as we stated, we do have Rob. Rob, you do the Sketchcraft. And I know that we were having some technical difficulties before this. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about Sketchcraft and who you are.
I do the Sketchcrafts. Yes. The Sketchcraft is a name I conjured up to annoy Mike the Balfo. Like, he's the only one who's ever complained about it. Hate to bring up that name, but it's true. So what happened is I have a last name people forget for some reason. Like, they go Dunas, Danish, Rick. I get Rick a lot. I don't know why, but yeah, fine. I'm cool. I mean, this was before Rick and Morty was. Now I'm like, damn it, should have kept Rick. But yeah. So I conjured this up just as a catch-all name. But I have been a professional full-time illustrator for about 15 years now, since 2005. So I've done everything from licensed T-shirts for Star Wars, Marvel, all them movies from Spider-Man 3 up till Civil War, up to comic book covers, video game magazines, and recently some video games themselves, like Spyro Reignited, Crash Bandicoot 4, and the upcoming Berserk Boy indie game.
Yeah, so
that's about it.
Let's hear about some more of that Berserk Boy. I saw that was on the dock here, and I've been actually watching you post a lot of the art as you're going along with it on social media.
Oh, on the socials. Yes. Yeah, we call that marketing. That's the technical term. I'm not certain if you're familiar with that. Yeah, I'm smart. So I mean, Berserk Boy is a platforming independent game we're putting out through Big Sugar. They published a game called Valfaris. Maybe if you ever played that. It was like a kind of like a hardcore kind of run and gun, kind of a heavy metal Contra. It's a good example of like what that game was. Yeah, that's super awesome. So we are making sort of a Mega Man Zero meets Pulse Man meets kind of a little bit of Sonic in there kind of feel platforming game. Independent team, like 5 people, pixels with hand-drawn cutscenes. That's what I'm doing. And some UI stuff and all the marketing materials.
So how many
we're
players does it look? It looks like there's, I mean, I've seen a couple of screenshots where there's 4. Is that just the marketing, or is that a previous game? Or is
this, my friend, is the greatest game of all time. It is the single player game. So no, it's a single player game where you have different forms you can turn into, and those forms give you different abilities. Kind of like, a Mega Man where you jump around different
beat the boss
abilities. It's sort of like that mechanic.
How long have you been working on that?
Oh, since with the pandy, that's what they're calling it now. I don't remember.
It's been 12 long years.
I remember life. Yeah, I remember life before and now. I don't know about in between. So somewhere around 2019, I think I came on board, but yeah, I mean, I've grown with the team, so I was supposed to come in, just do a few cutscenes, and like anything else, like y'all get along, and then I sign up to do more and more. So I'd say at least about a year now, probably a year and a half.
So I did see that, and as you stated, it's coming out on Steam. It's coming out on PlayStation as well. Is that going to be hitting and Switch, Xbox at all, or just the two for now?
Yeah, probably. Who cares? Like, right? Look, I love Xbox because now they're, they bought Double Fine, and but they're putting everything out on PC as well. So until Double Fine makes a game that forces me to upgrade my system, that's when I'll get like Xbox platform.
Makes sense.
It's not
Well,
quite
that's
my
cool.
platform.
It looks neat. So is there a projected date? I didn't actually see the date on the announcement trailer. Okay,
Spring
awesome.
22.
Cool. Well, we'll definitely have to get you back on here to talk more about that. Maybe I can work out something with the team and talk about that when it comes out. So looks neat for sure. So speaking of PC and being on all that, so did you get a chance to check out the Steam Deck?
Yeah, the Gabe gear, as we like to call it around the studio.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your thoughts on that? What's are you interested in that at all, or is it something flashy that might not have hold any water?
The thing with hardware, and I learned this the hard way actually. So when Kickstarter really took off around 20, when the Double Fine Adventure thing hit on Kickstarter, I was like, the next great console will happen through crowdfunding. Fans will make the next great console. Because I felt there was a lack of innovation in the console market. And the Ouya came out. And I was super excited. And I bought a Ouya. And and that is the one of the worst purchases I've ever made.
Yeah.
I actually, the first night I fired it up, I was on fire, but I didn't record any of my reactions. I was just ripping the shit out of this thing. And one time I wish I had a camera on me my whole life was when I played the Ouya. So that's when I realized how difficult hardware is to make. And I have bought into some experimental platforms in the past. Like I got the Oculus DK2, 2015 when it first came out. I bought the first generation Oculus Quest, which I love. But it takes billions of dollars, man.
True.
To make hardware.
It seemed like for when the Ouya was coming out that it wasn't. I didn't find the excitement in it, I guess. So I could now be the Rob was then, you know what I mean? Where with the Ouya, this is me with the Steam Deck. But at the same time, Valve seems to have gone through a little bit of trial and error as far as the different consoles that they were trying to do, regardless whether it be the camera or the I forget what their home console was that they were trying to bring out. Do you remember what that was called?
Oh, well, they brought these out, these Steam boxes. They made them. They just didn't go anywhere, which is my other point was. So then they hit up these Steam boxes where the idea was that it was like a mini PC you'd put on your TV and be able to game on it. Didn't go anywhere. My buddy bought one. And after using that, I was like, I'm going to pass. Now, they have been producing their Vive platform for a while, and a lot of people seem to like it. I'm not as big a fan on their hardware right now. I don't think their execution in the virtual arena. It's great for someone who's willing to still spend $5,000 every year on upgrading their VR.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that at all. So the price point on this is $399, but really it's a $650 system.
If you want to get the bigger size and the better.
It's not just the bigger size. To be able to utilize some of the key features software wise, you still need the system. So I think for me, if I'm going to say, all right, am I going to put my moolahs into Valve hardware that I guess I could take some PC games on the go? First off, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know about you. I'm trying not to. If I'm going somewhere, it's certainly not to play video games. I'm going to stay at home for that.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's more like, so I'm going to be getting the bigger boy. And then that'll be, I can take that, the big boy. And that'll follow me on my trips downstairs to the couch and maybe back upstairs to lay in bed and play a little bit of that. And then I think that's mostly because I'm on computers all the time for work, for the day job. So when now I could actually play these PC games that everyone says is so great, the whole PC Master Race. I could actually take it downstairs and enjoy it, much like I do the Switch. Although I don't think that it's going to be a Switch killer by any means.
It's not only will it not be a Switch killer, it's not a Switch clone. So I think that's in its defense. I'm a pretty fair guy. So in its defense, people are going around saying, "Oh, it's a Switch clone." I'm like, the handles don't undock the system. It's not a Switch clone.
Well, I think it's just the shape,
bulky as shit. It's super thick, bro. Like this thing you could kill somebody with. So if you don't like it, you know what I mean? You can go right up to Valve and
it's the Game Gear that went away for college and came back, and it's now fit. It looks good.
No, it's like dad bod gear, right? So or Rob on COVID gear, whatever you want to call it. Handy Rob. So I think it's interesting, but until Valve makes exclusive software for it, I'm not interested. So I really do believe, like, the reason why I buy a Sony system and a Nintendo system is I want to play Japanese and indie games. And indie games have done very well on both those platforms on the console releases, and Japanese games like I play anything from Valkyria Chronicles, all my JRPGs, dude. So many of them. The Persona games from obviously what Nintendo makes. So everything else kind of falls on a PC, but I mean, a lot of PC games are meant to be ran in Super HD, and to run a Super HD visual on a small screen, you're not really seeing much. You're not getting much out of RTX, lighting on a 7-inch screen or an 8-inch screen.
I think and people have to like almost temper their expectations a little bit. I know that it's not going to be the greatest experience compared to somebody that I know that has the 1440p, monitor, and they're running whatever graphics card in their rig or anything like that. But I think while it's a little bit more pricey than just the casual gamer, it almost fits pretty well for a gamer such as myself who doesn't play PC games normally, so
maybe until they come out with the Steam Deck 2 12 months from now. That's the other thing. Valve tends to release a lot of iterative hardware.
Right.
Did you ever read there was an article that was done when they were first getting into a hardware game? I want to say 2014, and Gabe Newell was talking about how they're able to manufacture. They have their own, like, it's not 3D printing like we have, but their own manufacturing plant at Valve.
No, I did not see that.
So they can iterate on hardware on site and not have to go overseas and do freight shipping and stuff. And that was kind of their plan in terms of building the Steam boxes. So I feel like, if this is a viable platform, I can wait till Steam Deck 3.
I mean, you could always treat it like you do your cell phones with Apple, or like if you do or even Android at this point, where they come out with a new model of the whatever phone you're using every year. And with Xbox and PlayStation wanting to do the same thing, even to an extent, the Switch is already doing that now. When they did the Switch, and they had the Switch with the new battery, and then the Switch Lite, which was a side thing, right? But then they come out with the Switch OLED model, right? So they're doing these, they're doing these like.
But Andy, does it still run at 15 frames per second? Because I gotta have that. I gotta have it, dude. I gotta have my.
At this point,
I need that stutter.
A lot of these consoles are starting to do those half measures or half life, upgrades or changes and stuff like that. Much like cell phones or, that's gonna be on the Steam Deck probably. So I mean, I can see it. PC is always that way. They're reiterating, every 3 months. Like, hey, you like this new 3080 RTX, whatever fucking graphics card? And now we have 3081 coming out next year. So
yeah, but you hit an age, Andy, where you're like, I know when it's important to upgrade, and I know when this is just, how can I spend my retirement on something that's going to devalue? So
when I get the Steam Deck, that's going to hold me over until maybe Steam Deck 5.
Maybe
it depends on the game.
Andy, you're a little more impulsive.
A little bit, but not quite as bad as you probably think.
You can be brought around. I remember when you were like, "No Switch for Andy."
No, I said I was going to wait for the Switch to see if Nintendo was going to fuck that up.
You waited like 3 months. You waited 3 months. Oh, it was the best. We all cheered over here at the Sketchcraft Studios. We're like,
I
we
did
got
wait. It
him.
was a
You
while.
know, like-
I waited for about a year and a year and a half, something like that. I did wait.
You're
No,
way exaggerating.
I did not
this
buy as
timeline.
quick as you think that I did. Because I wanted to see if it was going to. Because I remember playing even Breath of the Wild. I played that shit on my Wii U. You know, because I wanted to see how Nintendo was going to treat the Switch.
On like a chunky pad on a 4-inch screen,
but
you know, like,
it sucked because I liked the Wii U, and it really irked me that they were doing the Switch. So I was waiting to see what they were going to do, because it could have been another like Virtual Boy or another Wii U, where they're just like, oh, you know what, we fucked up again. Let's do another console. So, but I will give it to them. You know, I did eat it. And I actually bought 2 Switches, and I was tempted. I wanted to get the the OLED Switch, but because it's not doing anything other than a new screen, I'm gonna wait for that Pro.
Bro, they need they need to fix.
They do. They really do.
It's not it is a non-negotiable item for me. My 3DS runs at 30 to 60 frames per second on every game in 3D. Okay, my new 3DS is brilliant. I bought an extra new 3DS before they stopped manufacturing, because I'm like, I'm never gonna get to play these games in 3D. One day they're gonna stop making this, you know. Right. So I bought like an extra one, you know, just so it's there working, stored. But if those games ran at 20 frames per second, bro, I mean, you'd never hear the end of it from me. So I enjoy the Switch, but you can't have, literally right now there's a Zelda game. If you play the
Hyrule Warriors,
the Zelda Heroes, that's why I call it Zelda Heroes.
You know what?
I
bought it because it's Zelda, and I will purchase it. So it's sitting on my shelf, but I have not put it in yet, because I do know that once you get more than 6 enemies on the screen, it chugs. You know, it struggles to run to 10 like frames per second. I do after dinner, you know?
They're like, I do at all. What are you talking about? At dinner? Bro, you just gonna, dinner. Like, you go to sleep after dinner. So yeah, it's 15 frames. It's ridiculous. No other company could get away with this. Is like, remember when, this is that thing I love and hate about Nintendo, where it's like the Wii provided me an experience I couldn't get anywhere else. But they had friend codes, and they've never gotten past the friend code thing,
which is obnoxious.
Like how they get away with the friend code system was antiquated in 2006 when the Wii came out.
Yep.
Bro, it's 15 years later, you know? I mean, literally right when I started my career is when they started for using friend codes. And here we are, and I'm like, they're still doing it. And, you know, and they get this giant effing pass. And I don't want to hear how like it's a Japanese thing, because, bro, I got friends that live in Japan. They're like, no, we love, they use Sony, they use internet. No one gets it. No one understands why.
I've never heard that it was a Japanese thing. It's a Nintendo thing, you know.
I know. Right, but people tend to forget. I don't know why that happens, but here we are. Here we are at a point in time where, to get back, it looks like the actual Nintendo. You know, here's where they could possibly get me. Right, if I could play SX Super. PC releases, having to buy an Xbox,
which is a possibility. I mean, nobody has
console.
said no, because they talk about how you can wipe the Steam Deck out and use a Windows on it. So if you're able to do something like that on their little handheld, I would be incredibly surprised if Phil Spencer isn't already talking with Valve on getting the Game Pass on there.
Yeah, or like, you know, you could install Game Pass right on the system, right? And then just log in and play. If they do that, I'll buy one, because I already own enough hardware under my TV, you know? So that was the only realm I could fit. Plus, what the cool part is, well, can you use mods on that system? or would it just be streaming off your account?
I'm not sure. I think it actually is just streaming off the account.
I'm not the biggest mods guy, but some fans made a mod of Crash Bandicoot 4 off the concept I did that wasn't used in game.
That, right? It was like the Coco.
I'm so happy. I'm so
right.
Tana? Tana.
Dude.
Tana. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked neat. Yeah,
got my own mod, right? And they did it at a level I'm like, it's close to what we would have done in house. You know, like they couldn't mess with they had to keep the size of the character because of the rigging and all the animations. You can't really mess with that. But I remember really cool. one of the fears about doing that design was that I designed these plushie packs that would wrap around the character's figure. So I thought it'd be fun to have it where she carried a version of Crash Bandicoot around with her as a plushie pack. Because you know me, man, I love my plushies. It's like I've been that guy since
your plushie
1983. I was doing this in grade school. Like, if this is not something that like I picked up from another artist, like I've been doing this my whole life. It drove my art teachers nuts. So, but the fear was that those plushies would create clipping issues. And I was like, certainly we have the technology to solve that. But, you know, it was just one of those things that they didn't want to, you know, in production, a good idea is a dime a dozen. Everyone's got great ideas. The realities are someone has to make decisions, and those decisions generally fall around what's going to cause the least amount of trouble versus the bang for your buck, right? So trying to get a model just right, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, versus going right down a path we know it'll work, that's just as good. That's how it runs. But these guys managed to get that model with no clipping. You know, like I've been following this. So I'm hoping here in the next month or so, when I get some downtime, to be able to play through the game with the own mod, with my own mod.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome for sure.
I suck at games, so
you know what? I've actually been seeing a lot of people talking about the way people should be playing games. You know, it was a thing on Twitter within the last week where they were just talking about different difficulties. But you know, if you're having fun playing a game how you want to play, then who cares, right?
You know how I always played them as a kid? By myself, I could play one game. So we got Super Mario Bros. When it came out in 1985 with the NES system, right? My dad got that right when it came out. I didn't beat that game until right before Mario 3. I'm not good at games. I love games. I spent most of my time designing my own Mario games. Dude. You know? Like, I think my buddy, he was great at games. So when he would come over, my buddy Rich, I would go, you play, and then I would like design and draw, and he would play, kind of like the modern version of you know, Let's Plays where someone's playing, and it was like that, you know. So
go ahead.
So I would always play for fun on my end. I'd buy Mario 64 or I'd buy an RPG, I'd play it. But if we really wanted to get all the items and all the way to the end, I'd be like, all right, you play. I'm going to buy the pizzas. Let's put on the music. You know what I mean? And then we're going to over here. And it's like hanging out with my bud, you know? And that for me went away with what we call adulthood. I don't know if you're aware of this adulthood, Andy, like, you know, responsibilities. Yeah.
It's like,
so at least you got the tykes running around so you can watch them play games, right? So you get a little bit of that.
I mean, one plays the Roblox and then the other one, you know, watches YouTube.
They play the games. You're like, that's not.
I was like, okay. I mean, Roblox is essentially like the new Minecraft, but to be fair, I never got into the Minecraft either. So what I will do is I'll do that with Mary. She'll play. You know, I'll have her play Mario because we'll play together. Right, we'll do the 2-player, and so I'll be Mario. And the first thing I do, Mario 1, World 1, Level 1, I will hit that first Goomba and just fucking die. And it is so embarrassing. I'm so terrible at Mario, to the point where she just busts my balls as she's hopping over everything. She'll get 4 or 5 levels ahead of me, and then she's like, "Are you gonna play?" But no, and you know, or I'll fall down the little, you know, the chasms or whatever. It is very embarrassing for me to play Mario. But I enjoy watching other people play Mario.
Yes, some games though I am quite good at, like racing games. So like if it's an arcade, like Need for Speed Heat, like that's my jam. You wouldn't think it by knowing I'm not a car guy, but I love to drive really fast,
Yeah.
you know, and knock all the cops in the water and laugh maniacally.
Do you like the arcade realistic style, like a Forza Horizon?
No.
No. So are you going to be picking up the
arcade, like Motor Storm?
Are you going to be picking up that new one that's coming out for the Switch? The was it Cruisin'
Crash
Blast or whatever?
Cruisin'. I will, based on my friend, I'm going to see what he thinks, because although it's fun, the cruising games on the 64 were not my favorites play control wise. So different studio. So if it's got some good, I like responsive turning, and those cruising games back in the day had a lot of like, it's not drift, but it was like you'd kind of turn and it was almost like turning underwater.
They're kind of that way.
They weren't.
I mean, I did play Cruisin' Blast at the arcade. They do have those at like Dave and Buster's and such. So I have tried that out, but you know, they could always tighten that up when they move over, you know, port it over to the console. So, and hopefully
I'm excited
like that.
It's my, it's my jam,
because they're not going to bring back Rush 2049 or anything like that. So I might as well take my cruising.
Bastards.
So
sons of
right?
guns.
So speaking of games that we're good at and terrible at, and the Switch, have you picked up Zelda Skyward Sword? Have you played that? No?
Hell no, I'm not playing that game. So check it out. I went to E3. Let's see, I was at E3 2010, 2011. I think 2011 was the when Skyward Sword was at 2010. I can't remember which one. So I was at the one where they announced the 3DS and the one where they announced the Wii U, and I was there with Game Fam. And so they had Skyward Sword there, and I was super excited because I was like, it's probably 2010. Because I was like, yeah, finally 1-to-1 sword. Okay, this is the game that we were supposed to get at launch with 1-to-1 sword play. And it wasn't 1-to-1 sword play.
Yeah, not quite.
Wasn't even remotely close.
But it wasn't terrible.
I don't enjoy that game.
You know, be that person, to be the Skyward Sword apologist. You know, I liked it. I thought it was a pretty interesting game. I mean, I had my own gripes with it with certain bosses and stuff, but I didn't mind the waggle with the Wii U and the, you know, whatever, the controller.
Yeah,
but
man.
I mean,
my sensitive wrist.
That's your money maker, man. You know.
You know what I'm saying? You know, I gotta, you know, you get older.
But
you know,
I will say, playing it on the Switch, I've only put in about 3-4 hours into it so far. It is the same. I think the Joy-Con actually throw me off because of the weight of the Joy-Con is lesser than the Wii U. So I feel like I am going to. I never felt like I was going to throw the Wii controllers through a TV. I do feel like I'm going to do that with the Joy-Con. You know.
Yeah. Look, man. It's weird to me, this strategy. Because one, they haven't done anything to it graphically. There's no extra lighting like they did with Wind Waker. There's no extra graphical effects. It's a $60 purchase. Yeah, man. You know, at best, in my opinion, this should be a $29.99 game, like greatest hits thing.
I don't know if they I don't know. I wouldn't say that low. I would say like $39.99. You know what I mean? It is
a 10-year-old video game, Andy.
Right, but
it is a 10-year-old video game. It's older than Grand Theft Auto 5. All right, like you need. No,
I get it, and I see.
Take off the Nintendo.
No, I mean I get it. We shouldn't have paid $60 for new Super Mario Brothers, or World, or whatever the hell it was called, and we shouldn't be paying $60 for the trilogy that they came out with for the All Stars, which had nothing to do with any sort of graphic upgrades or additional things in there other than a couple music tracks.
At least with Link's Awakening, that's a new game graphically, new engine, the whole thing. They hype people. This is a port. This is less effort than the Mario trilogy release they did, which wasn't $60. I got it for like $39.
That was $60. I paid $60 for that. That was a $60 game.
I got it on Amazon for $39, dude. So
I did spend a little bit extra more than I wanted to do, but.
And you didn't even get the best one, which is Mario Galaxy 2.
What?
That's crazy to me, dude. I love Nintendo. People go, oh man, Rob shitting on Nintendo. No, bro. I get Nintendo day one no matter what. Because I learned my lesson in 1991 when I was like, I played Sonic the Hedgehog at my cousin's house when it first came out in September, when it was a separate release, right? And I came away going, Mario's dead to me. You know, that's for kids. I'm a Sonic guy. And I begged my dad, and he's like, "Oh, you're gonna get one. You can get the Super Nintendo or the Genesis." And I'm gonna get the Genesis because they had the Sonic pack in, so I got Streets of Rage with it. And yeah, man, look, it was fun. But that Super Mario World was the adventure. You know, like that was the one I was gonna get the most money out of. So I learned, I'm like, even if I don't think I'm gonna like a Nintendo system, I'm gonna get one at day one because at the very least, the resell on Nintendo is always great.
Yeah, I get it.
It's always great. That being said, they're ripping us off.
I think so. I think
we got,
you know what I mean? It's
$60 games, 50 frames per second. What is this?
Nintendo and their games is Call of Duty for all the other consoles. You know, we bitch about it, but we're gonna buy it every year. You know, whatever game that you put out there. So I get it. You know. But anyway. So moving on.
Uncomfortable silence.
So
that's where I put that.
Did you see that EA Play was happening and they announced the Dead Space remake? Did you check that out? See that trailer?
EA, everyone's got a Nintendo Direct now.
Well, I mean,
right?
can you blame them right now? You can't do anything like big events at this point. I mean, that was.
Yeah, they were going to do this no matter what.
Oh, probably.
So,
but.
Yeah, I saw it, dude. You know, Dead Space, like anything else, is weird to me because when it came out, no one cared. I was at Play at the time. It was like that, EA is trying to make a Resident Evil in space game. And some people liked it.
About it earlier.
Yeah, some people liked it, but it kind of went away, you know, and there's nostalgia for it now. So it could be cool. I like my horror. It's weird. Like I like a creepy location, but that's also pretty to look at. So like I like Resident Evil in a castle or in a mansion because although it's creepy, it's pretty to look at, right? Like the architecture, there's a vibe. When horror is like Resident Evil 7, where it's just in this, you know, 7 like house where it's just disgusting and there are maggots everywhere. I'm like, I don't want to go there. Like that's parts of Detroit. I've been there, you know, like I've seen this in real time.
And it wasn't pleasing, much like you said about how you played with your buddy and you were kind of doing like that Let's Play live or whatever. I'm not a horror person. I don't play a lot of those horror type games. Mary's the one that does that. So watching her try to play through Resident Evil 7, it wasn't pleasing to me visually. You know what I mean? Just like you said with the maggots, and it's just like this game is disgusting. Like I don't want to watch it. I just want to turn it off, but I'm not the one that's playing it.
So a rusty ship in space, I'm not interested in. If the setting of Dead Space was like, maybe it was one of those like Sid Mead kind of ships, like pretty, that gets just, you know, bloodied and messed up. You know what I mean? Haunted and cracked out. So it has like BioShock did a good blend of creating this beautiful Art Deco that is rusted and, you know, it's got coral everywhere. It's got these horror elements, but then it comes back to pretty. So like there needs to be this balance for me, you know, to get too involved. So I don't know, man. People seem to be genuinely excited. I mean, I'm glad to see EA is putting effort and money and resources into single player adventures. So I think that is probably the bigger takeaway, that they didn't make it like it's Dead Space in Fortnite, you know, like
very cartoony or Fortnite anything like or the crossover,
or just a skin in Fortnite, dude. Like that's all you're gonna get, suckers. You know,
they're not. They're actually putting some, like you said, an effort into the game, but they're not pulling on Ubisoft with the whole Splinter Cell, where we're gonna put Sam in every game, but we're not gonna put him in his own game.
It's that is a weird situation because they never released. Remember that game they were making, Sam, where you could like walk around crowds of people,
and then it
was
just
like 10, 15, 12 years ago.
Like
it was like the Jason Bourne of Sam Fisher games.
I mean, who knows? They definitely pulled the plug on there, but I think Ubisoft, when they try to go a little bit bigger on that kind of stuff, they definitely bite off more than they can chew, which is the case for what's that pirate game, the Skull and Bones, you know? I was like 5.
Bro, the Skull and Bones, I've heard some stuff about this. and without breaking anybody's NDAs, it is a very similar to me to Project Titan. If you're familiar with that MMO that Blizzard was working on for the longest time, they were making another MMO called Project Titan that was not World of Warcraft 2, but just a new MMO that they spent like $500 million on before they canceled it, and then took out a little piece of it, and that little piece became Overwatch. And this Skull and Bones or whatever pirate game is very similar. Like the numbers, it's up there. It's very close. The
longer it goes and the more I hear about it, the more disheartened I get on it. You know, like, I don't mind you delaying a game, and I understand how you need to do that to make sure your game runs well and is well received. But if you're just now reaching alpha, that's not good. That reminds me of Final Fantasy Versus 13. You know, that ended up becoming whatever the hell it wanted to, and then it became Final Fantasy 15. But after like 8 different drafts of the script, but we're gonna use it anyway and try to piece it together.
So you're saying they're all gonna get a car now in the pirate game?
Oh, wait, it's gonna be one ship. It's gonna look really fancy, and then it's just gonna be with 4 guys on there being bros.
You're now a boy band, but you travel by ship. And
you're going to sing shanties.
Right? You do sea shanties. Yes, shanties. Now I want this sea shanties boy band. God damn it, Andy.
Well, hey, if you get it on PC,
you
can get your mods. There you go.
Yeah, Steam Deck exclusive.
Now you have to buy
coming
one
soon to Switch.
They're giving you that game and it's exclusive.
Yeah, coming to Switch on 15 frames per second. Like 15 FPS.
On the QLED screen.
Yeah. DLSS 15 FPS.
So what I wanted to reach out. So with the Dead Space remake coming out, and we're getting the quote unquote director's cut of both Ghost of Tsushima and Death Stranding, what type of games would you like to see a remake of? Because we got Final Fantasy partial 7. Is there anything that would pop out that you would want, like a full bottom to top remake? Anything like that? Like a different Final Fantasy game?
Man, here's the thing, right? Problem with the Final Fantasy remake is it's not really a remake, it's a redo. Yeah. A remake to me would give me the option to play the game in turn-based gaming, So if you're going to do turn-based gaming, and you're going to spruce something up and whatever, and maybe add some new content, and I was able to pick and choose the creators that are behind that, right? I get to hold all the cards. It'll be Final Fantasy Tactics, That is the world.
Man. I've been wanting that for a long time. I want them to do a Final Fantasy Tactics collection. Right, we've had our ports of Final Fantasy Tactics, from when it was on the PlayStation to the PSP to the now you can get it on the Vita and whatever else. I want that, and I also want them to do the Tactics Advance game and Tactics Advance 2. I think those games with the whole remake and the ports, they're kind of left on the top shelf where you can't necessarily reach it, and they just collect dust, which is a shame because those are fantastic story turn-based games.
Right, I would want the original games included, but if you're gonna remake Tactics, I would like it to look like the artwork.
Yep.
I like the low poly with the pixel textures. Like if I had to make another game, that's the way I would keep it like that. But I would, if you're gonna put the budget into it and you're gonna get something, it would have to look like the concept art in a way mixed with the look of like Octopath in a way.
I would like that, but the 2.5D HD whatever.
Or that demo they just put out. What was that, Project Triangle? Whatever the freaking thing that was. I mean, look, too much reading, but more gameplay, please. But graphically, pretty amazing. I would just like the character models to reflect the height that they are in the artwork versus how they are in the game, right? You get little chunky dudes. So it would be that, but again, I'm also torn with if I had the Thanos glove and I was irresponsible and just did whatever I wanted versus helping the world. I've always had this dream of Shining Force 4, or Shining Force 1, 2, 3, but you remake 3 in the original, the 3's content in the original 2D pixel engine. Because the Shining Force 3 on the Saturn looks like dog doo-doo. Like, it's not good.
Yeah, you could do something like that. Make it like what's that game? I backed it on Kickstarter. It's what was it? Ayuden?
You talking about
Chronicle?
the guy from Suikoden?
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
from the Suikoden.
I would like to see something like that. You know what I mean? Where you get your artwork, but you get those beautiful backgrounds that are in that whole like Octopath style.
Yeah, and I just think strategy JRPGs it's a format that I'm never going to get tired of, you know? But when done right, I'll shed a tear.
Yeah.
You know? So but I think Tactics still has the best music and atmosphere.
It really does.
Like Shining Force is where it does. I that score, like put it this way, why is there not a symphonic orchestrated version of the Tactics score? It is the most cinematic Final Fantasy Tactics music ever, and it's still relegated to MIDI.
That's what I'm saying, man. They kind of left it on the shelf to collect dust, and I think only when they want to tease us more, they just poured it over, which is a real shame.
They don't have boy band hair. Is the problem.
You know what? Remake it. And you can do that for a couple characters.
Don't do that.
Well, okay, so like this is what you could do if you wanted that boy band type. Whatever that could be like, hey, we're going to remake Final Fantasy Tactics in this beautiful 2.5 HD graphics, and then we're going to sprinkle like what Final Fantasy likes to do. Square likes to do this, where they'll sprinkle the other characters in there as unlockables or something. So you could get the guys from Final Fantasy 15, and then you could get all that.
Well, Cloud's in the game.
He is, right.
You know, so Cloud is
do that with the other characters, or make like some sort of DLC packs or whatever it is you want to do. Although
I just think the artwork needs to the modern design of Square games is the modern design of Square games. You know, it's not. They arrive at looks that I don't fully understand anymore. And in the 90s, it was easier to tell the difference. So you'd have like Final Fantasy VII has its own look. There's no other Final Fantasy game that looks like Final Fantasy VII. It's unique unto itself. It's somewhere between Akira, Blade Runner, Chrono Trigger, and it's just like blend of those things. 8 is where I go, okay, that is clearly like a J-pop, J-pop infused sci-fi universe, and I love 8. I'm actually the biggest fan of 8 more than people. I think 8's score is, out of the 3 official Final Fantasies on the PlayStation, I think 8 has the best score. So I'm a huge fan of 8. 9 is back to the original medieval sprites, right? And so you had this battle between that J-pop look with Final Fantasy X, that sci-fi J-pop look, and this sort of medieval Star Wars-y mixture of stuff, which would sort of culminate in Final Fantasy 12, and they've never gone back to that. I mean, the MMO gets you there because it's kind of a hodgepodge of everything. It's like the Ready Player One of Final Fantasy games. But I don't care what anyone says. I don't like the mechanics of an MMO. I don't like MMO time-based, running around with the mouse click. I don't like the Warcraft way of playing games. I don't respond to it. So that design sense, if they're going to do a tactics, or anything, if they're going to add new content to an older game, it needs to fit artistically within those parameters. Final Fantasy R Remake is like Advent Children on steroids, it in a good way, not a bad way. It looks brilliant, but I still, as an artist, prefer the 2D concept art from the original Final Fantasy VII, and would give anything to have a game that looked more like that artwork than Advent Children. So, and I get I'm in the minority, but I don't care.
Well, it's not just that you're in the minority. You mean you appreciate both styles. You just have a preference for the other one.
I think artwork is timeless. The more things look artistic, the more they hold up over time. So when Wind Waker came out in 2001, I remember I was watching that trailer on IGN when they first had the IGN Prime, right? You could do E3 IGN Prime. And everyone was like, why are we paying for the website to get shut down? And when that got announced and it didn't look like the Ocarina of Time demo.
Which I hated that
Right?
demo.
That demo.
I thought it looked ugly.
Hey man, people wanted it though.
Yeah.
They wanted it. When I got Little Link back, I was like, yeah. It was that Ragnarok, yes, right? Yes. Couldn't have been happier. But over time, we've seen that unless Ocarina gets remodeled every 10 years, the real Ocarina game is not pretty to look at.
No, it is very sharp. Graphically looking at it.
And even the re-release on the 3DS, it needs it. Anytime you go realistic, you need to constantly update that look every 10 years because our concept of what is realistic changes. So, like I say, Final Fantasy R is an Advent Children style game, except if you go look at Advent Children now, you're gonna laugh.
I actually
like,
just picked that up when they did the 4K release of it, and you can see it. It's like this isn't what I thought it was. But it's because everything else has moved up higher than that. It's not saying that Advent Children looks like garbage. It's just that everything has surpassed that graphically, But
look at Tactics, which used hand-drawn sprites and classically pixelized, backgrounds that look like dioramas. That game still looks good.
I totally agree with you. That's what Octopath Traveler is always going to look beautiful, no matter when you turn that on. You can dust that switch off at 50 years from now and look at that game like, holy shit, that's nice. That's a nice looking game. Yeah,
I completely agree. So I think time tells. And a smart move Warcraft made back in the day was not pushing for realistic graphics. Remember when EverQuest was out when Warcraft came out, and I had friends who were working at Sony, and they were like, "Ha ha ha ha, Warcraft sucks," and I'm like,
"Yeah, it does still hold up."
Yeah, it holds up. It looks limited. I'm like, but it holds up. Like Legos. The reason why I think Legos work, aside from you can make your own whatever, but Legos as action figures hold up better than the actual action figures is your imagination is partly involved. And I think there's something magical about that. You know, so I'll always side on the concept art over the realistic renders.
It's the eye of the artist. That is Rob.
To a fault, but that's how I am, bro. That's how I am.
Yeah, going back to what you're saying about the graphics and Advent Children. I started watching the Resident Evil in Infinite Darkness on Netflix. If you've seen that or anything like that, but
the trailer.
I think it looks great, and I'm sure they're basing it off of a lot of the stuff that they've done before, and probably used Advent Children at that point. When they were probably working on 3D animation and pushed that up. So, to your point about the whole art. So,
yeah,
but since we're jumping over and now we're going to be talking about Netflix, I see. What have you been watching? Or just
on
in general?
Netflix, The Great Pretender. Actually, I forgot to put that down. So, actually, I do recommend an anime on Netflix called The Great Pretender.
It's on my list. I haven't actually watched it yet.
Fun.
Yeah?
Fun series. So, it's Ocean's 11-y, like anime style. It fluctuates between super fun and uber. Like I'd say the first season is super fun, second season's dramatic, third season's more fun, and fourth is like a culmination kind of thing. But like there's 3 right now that was going on 4 seasons. I think it'll end at 4. But a totally original art style and look. The very first episode, no spoilers, they go to LA. So it's fun to watch the Japanese interpret Los Angeles. Like, there's an in and out, they're stuck in traffic. So, but it's super fun. I think it's the most underrated anime on anywhere right now. So that is bar none. The only reason why I've kept my Netflix subscription until Masters of the Universe gets released, which is today or whatever, right? Next week, tomorrow. So I'm like, because I was like, I'm going to get rid of it because I got my Netflix. Well, I got Netflix back in 2004. So let's be honest, then I got rid of it because I was a poor kid. And then I picked it back up when they got the Daredevil thing because I was like, I'm on a Daredevil series. And then when that was over, I was like, well, I guess I'm done with this. But then they started putting up anime, and they string me along. I got Stranger Things and then the anime. And now No, when Stranger Things 4
don't
coming
know.
out? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
By the time they
And
come
I was
out
about
with
to get rid of it till
all the kids are going to be grown up, and we don't.
That's what I want. I want time to actually. I don't mind if time passes in between the seasons. Matter of fact, I'd prefer it because who has that many adventures like strung right next to one another? You know, like just bam, 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 bam. You know, you'd get tired. You'd be like, oh, more
Right.
adventures. So I'm fine with it. It reminds me of. I hope it's like Nightmare on Elm Street 3 to Nightmare on Elm Street 1, where the lead actress, the lead character, she comes back as a teacher kind of thing, you know? Maybe they're all in high school and then they got new kids are being affected and these kids got to protect. And it's kind of like they play the older role now versus the
Right. But I
thing,
don't think season 4 of Stranger Things is going to be that way, which is why I would like them to get it out to us now. So that way.
Maybe it takes place in the 90s,
Whoa.
man. Huh? Come on. Maybe it takes place in 89 and they all go to Universal Studios to play Super Mario Bros. 3, right? They get power gloves.
Hopper shows up with the power glove. He works for Nintendo. That's where he's been this whole time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
One of them learns how to fly. That's a different movie, but you know, it's same thing. It's Fred Savage.
Yeah.
You know,
we'll see about Stranger Things, but what you were saying about the anime, Netflix has actually been killing it on the anime scene. I mean, they've done
even 2D animation. Did you see Klaus?
I love that
when
movie.
that came out.
That became an instant classic, and I watched that I think 3 times. That the first year, I think it's the second year. I didn't see it when it first came out, but when the next year around, I watched it, fell in love with it. The characters, the design, everything about that movie, I loved. So I forced everybody in my family to watch it at different times. So I just watched it over and over again.
I think it's as good and as important as Iron Giant.
Yeah, I will agree to that.
You know. Yeah, and I don't think it gets enough. I mean, I can't say it doesn't get enough love. It's just that we live in a world now where every day is a new. We got to talk about the new thing. What's going on? What's going on? Loki season 2. I'm like, that's 2 years away. Like, chill out. Like, why don't we talk about the thing that's already out?
We definitely don't appreciate things the way we used to. So,
yeah, that's 100%. Right. So that I don't like to go my day we appreciate stuff. There's a lot of stuff people forget about, I would say that there is a problem and this isn't up to consumers or fans that do this so much as the way companies market things is that the minute you read it, you just go, oh, I when's the next one coming out? There's too much of a consumption and not much of a reflection.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
it's the YouTube generation of way of thinking, where it's like, I watched this 20-minute video and in 30 seconds, I get to watch another one, but they don't think it takes time. People don't see that creative process anymore and all the hard work and, time that it takes to give you that 4-minute TikTok or whatever. But yeah,
I'm a guy who's like, Return to Oz? Like that's my age. I'm like, I get it. But here's the thing with TikTok. They're all using licensed music and their day in the barrel's coming soon. Like the DMCA, the Eye of the DMCA Sauron is coming for them. Yeah. I don't care what country they're in, it's coming.
So what else have you been watching then? I take it you saw Loki. Since that's season 2.
Yeah, I saw Loki.
What was it? What did you love about it? The whole thing, or with certain parts?
Okay, so
you know what I mean?
I love the whole thing. So let's just start with the tone of the whole show, from the lighting, the art direction, the set design, the opening credits, the theme, the music, just the tone and the vibe of the whole series is one unlike anything Marvel's done ever. It's totally unique. 2, my buddy Jason Ward was saying this feels like Doctor Who with the budget. Like like if Doctor Who got the money they really deserve, right? This is what they would produce. And 3, it's the kind of vibe that if you wanted to like feel like what's Rob like in his soul, like that's the vibe for me. Like this blend of different generational things that create this inner bureaucracy of nonsense, like
and your
it's something
mind,
I
your
just
mind
really relate to.
constantly lives in the apocalypse.
Not well,
Yeah.
as an artist, yeah, because gigs are always ending. Gigs are always ending, and you're like, "Where's the money coming from? Mortgage?" I thought, once you pay off your student loans, you don't have to worry about things. No, you still got bills. So, yeah, there is that, and there's also like, I grew up a movie that is in my top 3 of all time is called Defending Your Life. No. You ever see that? So it was a movie that came out in the late 80s, written and directed by Albert Brooks with Meryl Streep. And it's a movie where he dies and there's this purgatory area you go to after you die. It looks kind of like Universal Studios in a way because there's trams. But while you're there, you have to go to court and look back at scenes of your life and see if you're ready to go to the next phase of whatever existence is. But while you're there, you can eat whatever you want, never get fat. People go and see their past lives in these museums, and you see like guys who are like old and they used to be like a 6-year-old girl, like in 15th century France. And they're like, what is this? I don't understand. But there's this whole thing of like, what does it mean to grow as a person? And it's just one of the best films ever made. And so this is one of those things. This is very Defending Your Life to me. Like if ran through the gamut of 60s sci-fi American and European pulp TV adventures, through space and time. So even if the story wasn't interesting, it has me on this alone that they created something that is like it feels like a darker version of Ragnarok in a way, but it is and isn't dark, There's something else to it that I don't have a word for yet, because it's apocalyptic, but not really. It's not like people are dying, but it's not like a death fetish thing where you're like, oh my God, they're dying everywhere. I don't know. There's something else to it. I think it's a new genre that I have to really put more mental thought to this. But I know that it's a feeling and a vibe that I want to continue to experience again.
It does.
Does that make sense?
That sounds neat. So,
and story wise, hey man, dude, you literally have a character who falls in love with themselves and then can't trust themselves. Like it really is about like, I think sometimes, there are different versions of ourselves. The Andy on this podcast, it's not the crazy gun-toting bounty hunter Andy that I know. Yeah, I mean, people don't really know how you like to ride cycles and, with dog and hunt down.
Well,
people who don't pay their mortgages,
You'll never get me coppers, you know what I mean? Yeah, so...
But we have different facets of ourselves, right? Like Andy with the family is one person. I'm a different person at a con, like we have these different parts of ourselves. And I think different moments in our lives, we're different people too. We're the same and we're different. And there's this other thing going on in the show that is being explored and not being explored. It's a weird thing where I think sometimes people feel that sometimes if a movie or a TV show or something hits the theme right on the head and says it's too much. But if you go back into like, say a prequel movie where Lucas is talking about how greedy corporations can basically ruin the entire universe, and start intergalactic civil wars because it's profitable. But it's not eloquent. It's not eloquent in how it does that. Then they go, well, it's not smart enough. It didn't do it enough. I think this show does so many things that I think you could easily teach an entire semester of college on it. It's super smart. Beyond what the fans are like, I like it, don't like it.
I mean, there's different ways to like Loki, or anything like that. But one of the things that I really loved about the show was the character himself. You know what I mean? I've always liked Loki from the first time he popped up, but this one, much like you said, you're different in your life, depending on where you're at in your life and what's happening in your life, we got to see actually two different Lokis, from the movies and the TV show. Because we got to see the Loki go through all that turmoil and the self-reflection and everything like that, and then he ends up dying at Thanos' hand. And then now we're watching somewhat of the same Loki from the Avengers do the same thing, only in a more fast-paced way, because he actually saw everything that happened, and then so he's got to take all that in, and then now he has to deal with what's happening in front of him with all his other variants and everything that, the whole, are we going to be pruned or not? And who is, Sylvie's actually a Loki, but there's that love there that he's trying to figure out itself. I loved it, man. If any of that made sense.
Well, there's something else too with Mobius that it reminds me of movies from the 30s, like Sunset Boulevard, wherein Sunset Boulevard's a movie about a screenwriter who can't really get anything, and he ends up you ever seen Sunset Boulevard? The you'll know the quote if you haven't. It's I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeVille. Yeah. So there was these movies throughout the 30s where the lead protagonist was like a screenwriter or an insurance auditor, like a person who does a check on an insurance claim and they get wrapped up in a noir. And Mobius is very much part of that scenario where he's just like this internal investigator, almost an insurance guy, right? He's like trying to hunt down these Lokis, but he's not doing it in a bounty hunter dog style way. He's doing it in a 1930s bureaucracy kind of way, like, we gotta check this in, fill out the paperwork, But the dialogue that they use is very noirish. Like when his boss, what's her face from Game of Thrones. I forget. I'm horrible at names, Andy. People are like, you don't remember the names. I'm like, I'm a pictures dude. I know I can see it in my head. I know who
you're talking about.
Yeah. When she goes, you threw it all away for a couple of Lokis. Like if you say that in a 1930s transatlantic dialect, you throw it all away for a couple of Lokis. Like it works. Like it's very, very early Hollywood noirish. So I've told you there are levels to this show that go beyond plot. Okay.
Real quick before you get so I think Mobius is a Loki. He is the Loki that helped the TVA, where all these other Lokis are trying to take it down.
Maybe. I mean, I think, it's irrelevant to me who ultimately becomes what or
who they were
or where they came from or what they become. What's important to me is what is the subtext in a way, what is being said that isn't being said. And there's a scene at the very end of the last episode where our Loki, the Hiddleston Loki, says, I can't be trusted. I'm someone who can't be trusted, and you're someone who can't trust. And he's saying that to himself in a way, right? That we are at a dichotomy, right? We're as people, we're conflicted, where we can't trust, but we can't be trusted as well. There could be a third element where Mobius is a person who ultimately trusts everybody. He could be a Loki that trusts. Ultimately, he ends up trusting everyone. He trusts the guy he knows will lie to him, right?
I mean,
if he did and he filled that role, there's different elements to ourselves.
For sure. I mean, I totally see that. And that's why I think part of me is that Loki is Mobius. You know what I mean? And I think that's why he has such I don't want to say a fanaticism about it, but
well, think about his name, Mobius. It's a Mobius strip. It's a loop. Right. It's an infinite loop.
But because he's into the Lokis and what Lokis can do, he really wants Loki to be able to change, to be able to be the one that helps out. But that's because he was a Loki, so.
Yeah, or he's projecting. Right. Now, here's the problem. You can theorize this. I learned this lesson the hard way in 2002. When I went and saw a movie called The Matrix Matrix Reloaded. And at the end of The Matrix Reloaded, there's a scene where Neo ends up back in the real world, and a sentinel comes from him. He holds his hand out and he destroys it, basically stops it. Right. And what does that mean? And then it sort of ends, and then come back in 6 months and see the sequel. And I had this theory that although the movie didn't feel like, much of the first film, I had this personal theory that, there's a Matrix inside a Matrix. The reason why he can control this is because this thing that they escaped to is another level of a Matrix. It makes them feel like they escaped.
Mm.
And I had all these fan theories, and I was like, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be deep. And then I get to the next film, and nah, man, he just can just kill robots. And I was like, why? These so less interesting. So I got to be very careful with. I like to fund. I will never do that now and go into a theater and be let down because I didn't get that. So if Loki season 2 comes around and Mobius really is just a guy who likes jet skis, you know what I mean?
It's whatever. That's where.
I'm not going to say the fan theories were better, Andy.
Because I mean, if my theory was better, I'd be writing on the show, or.
And even if you were, like, I try to tell people, you think, again, like, would bring it back to Crash on a level, do you think good ideas are hard to come by when you have that many talented people on board? No, they all got great ideas. Someone has to decide which way to go. And there's way more factors than good or bad. Sometimes it's like, we got 15 great ideas. This is the one that makes the most sense with who we have to work with. Maybe they don't have a guarantee they're going to have Owen Wilson for another series. Yeah. And so that isn't the focus of the show. And then later on, maybe he comes back and so they're able to expand it or not expand it. So there's all sorts of reasons for this. Like, a friend of mine was complaining about the Hawkeye show. And he goes, Sky, man, I love him, but sometimes people get misguided, right? And he's like, I don't like how they're trying to make all my heroes into women, because Hawkeye's going to have a daughter and she's taking over. And I had to explain to him, like, one, the actor doesn't want to do this role anymore.
Yeah, they're all coming up to their end. That's why Robert Downey Jr. isn't around. That's why Chris Evans has stopped being Captain America. They want to do other things.
So when faced with the fact that their actors are going to walk away sooner than later, right? You have one of two options. You just recast like they did with Don Cheadle and Rhodey, right? And that worked. No, I don't think at first. I think Don Cheadle settled into that role pretty quickly. But the Iron Man 2, I don't know. Or you say, where is the next logical step this can go within the story that we've already built up, and how can we extend this to another character? And the idea of his daughter taking over is an angle that we haven't seen yet. So I figure if that ends up being a colossal failure, they'll just come out with Hawkeye part douche, like, like it'll just be another guy who looks like Jerry,
I mean, cause I've actually was having a conversation about something like this too. And I don't mind all the changes that they're doing with these characters because it's been such a completely separated thing from all the source material. If you want your Hawkeye to stay the male Hawkeye, you still have your comic books. He's never going to go away with that. The what's awesome about these movies is we get to see these stories and they get to move forward and they're continuing as we continue with our lives, much like if they were actual heroes out and about in reality. They're not going to stick around forever. They may die, they may retire, and somebody else is going to take their mantle, So I'm very excited about it. I'm not excited about the Hawkeye show, but I will watch it. But I'm excited to see like Ironheart and, where, Armor Wars, and see, I was excited about when, what's her name became Rescue almost. And at the end of Avengers, Pepper Potts, you know what I mean? So I thought it was going to be cool to see, her do her own movie or, be part of the Ironheart thing, even though now, that's going to be completely gone. But I like to see the progression.
But these are the realities of production, though, Andy, right? Where there isn't a boardroom where they're like, let's find a way to piss off the unwoke Twitter. That's not how
it's not going to be that way. But
are made.
Eventually, this whole thing is going to stop where it's at. The wheels come to a complete stop, and then they're going to recast, they're going to reboot, and they're going to tell a different type of story. So you are going to get these characters again much later on.
Yeah, I mean, look, we literally got, a new Spider-Man every 4 years, for 1 point, and then 4 or 5 years, and then you've got how many Batmans?
Yeah.
I mean, literally between Keaton to Clooney in a 10-year span, you go through 3 Batmans back in the 90s,
and they're still kind of doing that for Batman.
Less than that, because
because we went from Affleck now to what's his name, Robert Pattinson. Yeah,
Robert Pattinson. So that's where, man, I'm just like, look, what I care about is 2 things. 1, that I'm entertained. If I'm entertained, got my money's worth. 2, are they serious about fulfilling whatever they conjure up? Because I'm not a fan of them saying, yeah, here's all our big plans, and then they never do none.
Yeah.
Remember when DC had that giant list of movies they were going to make, and that never, here's Deathstroke, and we're going to have a Flash film, and we're going to have all this stuff. It never happens because, they want immediate, if they don't see the immediate money, damn, we cancel. Your fault. You didn't support it. I don't believe in that. Like, the one thing I can say about Marvel Studios, and I'm not like a big Marvel guy, folks. Like, I enjoyed, the L guys, the Lee Liefeld, Larson back in, McFarlane back in the 90s. But if it wasn't for Joe Matt and Chris Pacciolo, I never would have gone back, for the longest time. So I hung around for the artists, the stories were fine, but the what ifs were the only ones that I ever enjoyed reading, because it was like, they're self-contained. They actually do things. People have shit actually happens in a what if comic versus all the other normal ones. But every now and then they conjure up a win, like Age of Apocalypse was a big event. That was fun. But since then, man, like modern Marvel ain't my thing, but 80s Marvel wasn't my thing either. The movies are my thing, and they won it over just persistence. And I worked on all them t-shirts, and let me tell you something, there ain't nothing more tiring than having to freaking work on a licensed property. Like, if you want to watch something just drain your love of it, have to get shit approved.
Yeah, because you have to rework it 100 times, and then eventually you're like, I don't care.
For no real artistic improvement whatsoever, just because someone had a note.
Yeah.
You're like, why am I doing this change again? What is the point? So
it is what it is. We'll see where they go with everything else, and just enjoy it as the entertainment that we have. So, Rob, I want to thank you for being on. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time, and this has. I could chat it up, dog. It's always fun to talk. I like talking to you about all kinds of shit like that. This is our text messages. So. But I enjoyed it.
Only mine read like Morse code because my fucking type is so horrible.
But this has been Jabberbox episode 6. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you, and don't forget that if we post each and every week about whatever it is that we want to talk about, if you like that, please join us over on patreon.com/dandydigital, where you can write in and be part of the show and get the episodes early. If you have no bucks to toss our way, that's just Dandy by us. Please find us and subscribe to us on YouTube and any other podcast services around the world. Rate us to help us grow the show into something better. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.